And a very good evening to you, and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101. It's a Monday evening for those of you who are in Guyana, in the wider Caribbean, and North America. And for those of you who are joining us from Europe, it's good night. Good night to you. Those of you joining us from other time zones in the United States of America, good afternoon. Good afternoon to those of you who are joining us from the West Coast of the United States of America. And those of you who are joining us from other parts of the world, good evening, good night. Welcome to Politics 101. It's Monday night. Please do, as you're accustomed to doing, share the link and let persons know that we are on. Very good evening to all of you. The weekend, hope you had a wonderful weekend. And I always say, do something relaxing on the weekends, especially those of you who get the time off and don't have to work on the weekends, and also to do something political. Welcome tonight. Of course, you know, there's never a dull moment with Guyanese politics, never a dull moment with Guyanese politics, and never a dull moment. As we come on here tonight, there are three stories that have caught my attention. One, of course, is the catching of the PPP after all the pomp and ceremony last Monday. Once people got down to business, they found that there were lots of things that have been wrong, that are wrong with the list that the PPP presented in the various neighborhood constituency and in the municipalities. People who are dead are not only found to have endorsed the PPP's list, but in one instance, at least in one instance, the person was a candidate on the PPP list. And of course, the relatives of that person came forward. And as Vincent Alexander said here on Friday night, you know, one instance is enough. You know, one of the things that we've learned is that, one, it's easy to rig elections in Guyana. Second, the PPP has decided that rigging is going to be part of its modus operandi going forward. And third, that rigging takes place long before election day. Here is the first aspect of the electoral process. That is the presenting of candidates and having people sign up to support the list. And already we have seen tampering by the PPP. Rigging, let's say it loud and clear. We have seen rigging already by the PPP. And we have said, those of us who have opted not to participate in the election, we made it very clear that we have no confidence in the electoral process. Absolutely no confidence. We respect the right of the APNU to go into the elections for pragmatic reasons. And I have no doubt in my mind that the APNU itself does not have any confidence in the electoral process. And we are seeing why. The next story, of course, that caught my eyes was this arrest of the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Home Affairs, arrest by the United States authorities as she passed through the country. And there are so many questions that are not answered by that development. So many questions. And the third story that we're following tonight is the setting up of a national intelligence agency. A national intelligence agency by the government. A national intelligence agency. And they are in Parliament today, and the bill was expected to be introduced in the National Assembly today. A government setting up a national intelligence agency. It's boggles the mind. So those are the three issues that caught my attention, and never a dull day in our politics. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. Politics 101. We're dealing with a government that is busy telling us about one Guyana and national unity. It says one thing, does the total opposite. And some people are riding that horse as if there's something profound that is being done by the government. National unity can be a mask for something deadly. And I am arguing that the PPP's One Guyana is a mask for resetting and realigning Guyanese politics and society so that control of one of the state, the government, and the society would be in the hands of one section of the society. The coming of oil to our country has raised anew some old questions. It has raised anew the question of who governs. It has raised the question of how the economic pie will be divided. It has raised our ethnic problem, which, contrary to what people say, never goes away. And it wouldn't go away until something definitive is done. One Guyana. You know, it reminds me of a calypso gypsy Winston Peters did, Lord, more than 25 years ago, called Unity. And I think that that calypso is so apt to our Guyana. Let me see if I have it here. I can play a couple stanzas for you. That calypso is so relevant, to our Guyana. Let's see if we are able to pull it up here. Here we
Hey, hey. What does it take to unite a multiracial nation where our history shows up great divisions of the past? And there are those who for years have seen themselves as powerless. Now they have finally attained the power they seek at last. Now would there ever be a distribution of equity that's fair? Or would there be this attitude of self-preservation and I don't care? I am just warning, if that is so, it would not be the way to go. Else there would be a fracture and tear, a gulf wide enough that time and all can't repair. And it's gonna take a long time, I know. It's gonna take a lot of time to grow. And then it's gonna take time, it's gonna take love, it's gonna take trust. And it's gonna take you, it's gonna take me, it's gonna take all of us. But it's gonna take a long time, I know. Oh yeah. Yeah. All actions must eradicate traces of alienation. If we are serious about one love and a change in our nation, we must not expect meaningful change to come about overnight. Cause any change for the better of anything takes a lot of fight. And any agenda has to be transparent, it cannot be disguised. You cannot speak one thing and your action speaks otherwise. Then unity would be just a fast. No such hypocrisy ever lasts. And you would be taken to task. Then reality would lash you furious and fast. And it's gonna take a long time, I know. It's gonna take a lot of time to grow. And then it's gonna take time, it's gonna take love, it's gonna take trust. Most of all, it's gonna take you, it's gonna take me, it's gonna take all of us. But it's gonna take a long time, I know. Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Oh yeah. All right. You must never practice the things that in the past you criticize. Because if you do, it just helps to leave this nation more traumatized. And there's nothing worse than mistrust to create real division. And the last thing unity wants is total polarization. No political oligarchy should ever be allowed to develop. And racism, no matter how disguised, would have to stop. Don't make unity a puppy show. Just remember I told you so. It would not be the way to go. Else the darkest cloud would cover up our rainbow. And it's gonna take a long time, I know. It's gonna take a lot of time to grow. But then it's gonna take time, it's gonna take love, it's gonna take trust. And it's gonna take you, it's gonna take me, it's gonna take all of us. It's gonna take a long time, I know. It's gonna take a lot of time to grow. And it's gonna take trust. And then it's gonna take you, it's gonna take me, it's gonna take all of us. It's gonna take a long time, I know. It's gonna take long time to grow. I know. It's gonna take the Indian, the Chinese, the African, and the Syrian man. And everyone who stayed at home to them is this blessed land. It's gonna take, 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 it's gonna take all of us. Well, it's gonna take love, it's gonna take trust. It's gonna take you, it's gonna take me, it's gonna take all of us.
There, the mighty gypsy, Winston Peters. National Unity. He sang that song, that calypso for Trinidad, but I'm sure that as you listen to the lyrics, it's Guyana today that he's speaking of. Don't do the same thing that you criticized yesterday. Sound to me like the PPP. National unity is not a puppy show. It's going to take all of us. One Guyana can't be about one party and one race and one side. It has to be about all of us. All of us. So don't let them fool us. Don't let them fool us. Don't let them fool us. The rigging has started. The rigging has started. The PNC has been able to find people who were coerced, who were paid, fake names on the list. You see, the PPP get caught in its own game. It believes it's so invincible. And it believes that the opposition is so weak that they're not going to do the kind of work that was supposed to be done. Mr. Jagdeo had to call and apologize. We don't want just an apology. It's a criminal act. To put somebody as a candidate on your list when that person is dead. It's a criminal act. The rigging has begun. The rigging has begun. The PPP has worked out that to win elections in Guyana, you have to rig. And you have to rig long before election day. The observers come a week before the election. And by the time the observers get here, the PPP has done its job. But they got caught. Round one, nomination, and they start to rig already. We have to congratulate the PNC for getting on the ball right away. You see, in 2020, if there wasn't that recount, the country would not have known how elections are rigged. It means that the then coalition did not do its job before elections. And it's good to see that they have learned from that mistake and they're doing their job now. Jack Dio and the PPP are saying that the opposition is going and drive fear in people. If you go into the people's stronghold, if you come into my stronghold and you bully my people to go on your list, you bribe my people to go on your list, then you're challenging me. And I have every right to defend my territory. The PNC has every right to defend its territory, to go to those people and to find out what exactly happened. That's not driving fear in people or bullying them. These are people who are traditionally the PNC supporters. And the PNC has a right to defend its territory. Pure and simple. The PPP defends its territory. And it has every right to. So this thing about accusing the opposition of going and driving fear in people, in the first place, to get those people on your list, you drove fear in them. You use the power of government. You use your police powers. You use your money power to drive fear in them. And the opposition has every right to go into its communities, and to find out what exactly went on. No political party gives up its territory. This thing about paying people, bribing people, is not sustainable. It is only sustainable if the opposition allows it to happen. I believe everyone has the right to belong to whatever political party they want to belong to. If Black people want to go and join the PPP, that's their business. I have no issues with that. What I do have an issue with is when you go into the community and you coerce people, take advantage of their economic situation, take advantage of their helplessness in the face of power. That is what I have a problem with. And I have a problem with people who knowingly allow themselves to be dragged into that nonsense. Knowingly. As you all know, I don't like this whole issue of take the money and then vote against them. If someone comes to bribe you, do not allow yourself to be bribed. Pure and simple. Yes, I understand that people need money. But sometimes you have to make a choice between money and dignity. When you allow yourself to be paraded up and down like trophies, it's an assault on your own dignity. So yes, I do have a problem with first the PPP going into the communities and taking the lives past Black people. And secondly, those Black people who allow themselves to be ridden. The PPP dare not go into the Indian community and make Indian people fools knowingly. I'm not saying Indian people are not being made fools by the PPP, but not knowingly. And the PNC, they're not going to Indian areas and do that to Indians. The Indians will not allow them, and the PPP will not allow them. You heard what that man said a few years ago? Mr. Jagdio, chase them out. Well, if he can tell his people to chase out the opposite side, then the opposite side must do the same when they're coming into your communities to bribe you and to make you fools. If the PPP is going into a community on their outreaches and whatever they call them, and they're going to talk to people about what is stupidly called development, I don't have a problem with that. The government has a right to go into all communities. Even though we know that they're going into those communities to play politics, they're going and they make promises which they never deliver on and so forth. As the government, they have the right to go into those communities. And they should not be impeded from doing that. But if the PPP as a party is going into the communities to bribe people and to make people jackasses, then those communities have a moral right to tell them, no, you can't come here and do that. Again, if the PPP wants to go into Black communities to campaign, I have no problem with that. All parties should be able to campaign in all communities. So I don't have a problem with the PPP going in to campaign. My issue is if you're going in to bribe people, to assault their dignity, then those communities have a moral right to put up barricades. And it is in that context that I have absolutely no apologies to make in advising African Guyanese communities not to allow the PPP or any party to come into your communities to bribe your children. Ultimately, that bribe will turn into iPass. And it is an assault on the dignity of the community. We have come too far. We have come too far. We have beaten the indignities of slavery, the indignities of colonialism. We have stood up against indignities of our own parties over the years, the undignified behavior of our own parties over the years. If we, in the past, could have stood up against the PNC trying to make fools of us, we have every right to stand up against the PPP making fools of us. Clear. You come to do government work, come in. You come to campaign for the elections, come in. You come to bribe and to reduce our children to chattel again, don't come. And those who decide knowingly to allow themselves to be bribed, we have to make it uncomfortable for them. Now, there are some people who may unknowingly fall for the bribe. I mean, somebody who's hungry and a man comes and gives you a meal and gives you some money. You may fall for it. You may think he's a good Samaritan. And I think that happened with some of our people. But when you knowingly allow yourselves to be bribed and to be enslaved, then we in our community have to make it uncomfortable for you to do so. I've said on this program, do not hurt anybody. The politics of violence doesn't have an exit door once it starts. We've seen it across the world, whether it's in Sudan or the Middle East or India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. We've seen it. Political violence has no exit door. So refrain from hurting anybody, even if you're tempted to refrain from doing that. But you have to use moral ways of letting those people know that you cannot allow yourselves to be bribed by a government that is killing your sons and daughters, that is jailing your sons and daughters, that is breaking down the homes of your sisters and brothers. You cannot allow and ought not to allow yourself to be bribed by those people. I'm saying those who put on those red t-shirts or jerseys, whatever we call them, last Monday. Those who knowingly, some people unknowingly did it, some people did it for a meal, but some people knowingly did it because they seek to get some privilege and benefit from the PPP. Those people have committed a sin against our group, a sin. And the wages of sin, the Bible says, is death. We're not dealing in death. But the wages of sin must be discomfort. Everybody in the community should know who these people are. Do not cooperate with them. Do not socialize with them. I am making a distinction, as I always do, between bona fide PPP members from the Black community. There are some who have been with the PPP for years. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about this new breed of soup drinkers. Some people may have started out as soup drinkers and they became real members. That's okay. That's their right. But these who've allowed their bodies to be used to shame their group, to shame their race, those are the ones who we have to make uncomfortable. Don't treat them as though they did nothing. Record history that in 2023, there was a group of Africans who knowingly cooperated with those who want to make Africans second and third class citizens in Guyana, because that's the objective of the PPP. For the PPP to get through with its master plan, and it has a master plan. You all don't fool yourself. There's a master plan. There's a master plan for the wealth, and there's a master plan for the politics. There's a master plan for the culture. And those who stand in the way of them and their master plan, the success of their master plan, is the African Guyanese people. Our Indian Guyanese brothers and sisters, the vast majority of them will not fight this fight. Some of them would not fight because of fear. Some of them would not fight because they are going along with the agenda. The PPP is not accountable to them because as far as the PPP is concerned, they're going to vote for them anyway. So a combination of those factors means that our Indian brothers and sisters are not going to be in the fight right now. Not now. Our Amerindian brothers and sisters, they've been so beaten down over the centuries that they have a right to look after themselves. They have a right to struggle for themselves and don't get into the fight between Indians and Africans. The Portuguese and Chinese, they are what you call middlemen. In ethnic studies, we call them middlemen. These are small groups in the society who choose not to get engaged in the politics, but to get engaged in the economics. And they go with whoever is in power. Well, there was a time when the Portuguese supported the United Force. And then they later supported the PNC. And when the PPP came to power, they swing to the PPP. When the coalition came in, they swing back to the coalition. And now the PPP is in with big money. They're prepared to protect and defend the PPP, as is seen by our brother, Kit Nascimento, who came out swinging against people like me. In protecting the PPP, Kit is protecting privilege. I heard him accuse me of saying that he is part of the plantocracy. Kit are too bright. I read books. I know you're not part of the plantocracy. You may think, as you said, these men are supposed to be bright. Well, I'm telling you tonight, I'm bright enough to know that your poor parents came from Madeira as indentured laborers. But within decades of your foreparents coming here, they were given affirmative action in the economy. They came to work on the sugar plantations. They hardly worked on the sugar plantations. They were shunted into commerce. Affirmative action, Kit Nascimento. That's what you are benefiting from. The affirmative action of the colonial state. The privilege. So no, you're not a descendant of the plantocracy. But you are a beneficiary. Your group is a beneficiary of the formative action granted by the plantocracy, Kit Nascimento. How dare you suggest that I don't know the difference between plantocracy and indentured laborers? I do know the difference. But I also know the linkages which you are trying to hide. The privilege which your group has in Guyanese society arose out of affirmative action. And that when the colonials left, your role in society was to ensure that that privilege continues. I am not going to be like Brother Desmond Hoyt, who talked about the Portuguese mafia. I am not going to go there. All I'm saying is that the Portuguese enjoy privilege in the society as a result of affirmative action by the plantocracy. And now that the PPP is in power with tremendous wealth, that middleman group, the Portuguese and the Chinese, they're going to align themselves with the PPP because they're not into the politics. You know, they're into the economics. That's why we call them the middleman in ethnic studies. Ethnic studies. So the PPP has a master plan. Chinese and Portuguese are not going to stand up against them as a group. That does not mean that individual Chinese or individual Portuguese will not stand up against them. I want you all hear me good. As a group, they're not going to push back against the PPP. As a group, Indian Guyanese are not going to do, partly out of fear, partly out of solidarity with the PPP, which they see as their party. This does not mean that individual Indians or small groups of Indians are not going to push back. The group which has the burden of upsetting the PPP's master plan is African Guyanese. And that is why the PPP goes so hard against African Guyanese. And it's a mixture, you know, a mixture of violence against African Guyanese, of bribing African Guyanese, of smiling up with them, of criminalizing them and their leaders, of trying to keep their party weak. Yes, it's African Guyanese who are standing in between the PPPs and the success of their master plan. You know, Hitler had a master plan for Germany and the world, and you all saw, those of you who know history, you saw where it ended up. And the PPP has a similar master plan. It's economic. Because, of course, wealth is power. But that wealth is grounded in a notion of superiority, ethnic superiority. And African people cannot, ought not to cooperate with a plan that is intended to push them to the bottom. All kinds of stuff they're coming up with. The PNC must look for crossover votes. I don't know if they think Indian people, well, they know that Indian people are not stupid. Why are Indian people in 2023 going to leave the PPP, which has tremendous wealth at its disposal, and cross over? No, if an Indian third party, like the AFC, when they crossed over, Indians crossed over in 2011 and 2015, they didn't cross over to the PNC, they crossed over to the AFC, and they saw the AFC as a rebel Indian party. They're not going to leave the PPP and cross over to the PNC. They've never done so. They've never done so. And Africans, on the other hand, never did so. They never crossed over to the PPP. Some Africans supported the WPA in its day. Some supported the AFC when Truckman was the presidential candidate in 2006. And then once 2011, the APNU was formed, the PNC and the WPA made up their differences in the national interest. Those Africans came back over, that went over to the AFC. People forget that. Human beings have to have an incentive to cross over. What is the incentive to come over to the PNC? When every day you're hearing in the Indian community, Burnham is a devil, the PNC are riggers and murderers, Black people don't know to do business, they're inferior. Why are you going to cross over to their side? Let us be reasonable. They're going to cross, but they're going to cross to a rebel Indian party. If they still believe that the AFC can serve Indian interests, then they could vote for the AFC. Or maybe, another Indian party may come into being. They're saying that Glenn Lal is trying to form a party. Maybe Indians will vote for Glenn Lal, we don't know. But the PNC / APNU should not fool itself. It's a trap they're setting. They're setting a trap to get you bogged down in trying to get Indian votes and neglecting your African constituency. And then when you leave your full coop open, they sneak in, as they did in preparation for this local government election. The opposition has to pay attention to its community. It has to protect its community, defend its community, while at the same time looking after the national interests. And looking after the national interests means that you have to see about the interests of Amerindians and Indians and maybe Portuguese. I don't know. I don't think Portuguese and Chinese have a working class. So what the opposition, PNC, WPA, maybe the AFC have to do is that they have to defend their community. while at the same time looking after the nation. You can't look after the nation and don't look after your sub-nation. And that's where the PPP people wants Mr. Norton and the PNC to go. They're saying that the tail is wagging the dog, meaning WPA is wagging the PNC. Foolishness. But that's what they're saying, because they want to get the PNC to turn its back on its people. Because the WPA is very clear. We are not turning our back on African Guyanese. Very clear about that. That we have to balance our defense and protection of the African Guyanese community that is powerless and that feels powerless, while at the same time looking after the national interest. It's not one or the other. If African Guyanese interest is not looked after, the national interest would be weak and incomplete. We're clear about that, and they know we are clear about that. So they're baiting the PNC to say, look, to get a small party leading you. Because what they want is for us to leave African Guyanese so that they can go into the community and take advantage of them. That's what they are planning. And that's why it's important for us to be militant in the Black community. We need leadership that don't play games. Politicians will always play games, we know that. But there are times when politicians have to say, no games. The PPP is not playing games. They're playing for keeps. And people on our side cannot play games. How is Linden allowing the PPP to go in there and to take their ground that is a gift to them and determine what the ground needs to be? Where is the leadership in Linden? Where is the leadership in Linden? In 2011, 2012, when they wanted to take away electricity, the people of Linden provided their own leaders. Brother Sharma Solomon, Sister Vanessa Kisoon, and others. They didn't wait on George Strong to provide the leadership, and they struggled. They paid a price. 3 of their sons were murdered. Except for Brother Nigel London. I'm not seeing leaders in Linden from the opposition side standing up. Standing up. The PPP knows that the success of their master plan, depends on the African Guyanese. And if the African Guyanese fall, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. Now, there's this lady that they arrested in the United States of America. I don't get into all the tralala story because I don't want to give you all the impression that because America arrests an official of the government, America gonna come and help us to get rid of the PPP. But there's some questions. This woman is the permanent secretary. The permanent secretary is a non-political, non-partisan position. This is the person that runs the ministry. She was going to China. You're hearing one story that she was going on government business. Then you're hearing she was going to a conference, a political conference in China. If it is true that she was going to a political conference in China, what is a permanent secretary doing at a political conference in China? A permanent secretary could go to a meeting of permanent secretaries, could go for training in any country, in administration. But she was going to a political conference, according to some reports. If that is true, what the hell was she doing as the PS going to a political thing, a political conference? Is this young lady a member of the PPP? That's the other question I want to ask. Is she a member of the PPP? You see, I am dealing with the political side of things. There's the other side that I know that, she is friends with, Azuddin and these people that, there are other commentators who are experts on that part of things, that side of things. I am asking political questions. Why was she going to China? Was she on government business or was she on party business? I understand that she's friends with people who get big contract from the ministry. But we all know about the corruption. Is she part of that corruption? The big question here is, what is the role of the PS, the permanent secretary, in our governance system? Some of us were critical of Mr. Granger because when he came in, he didn't knock off permanent secretaries, or most of them, he left them. The mistake he made was that he didn't realize that those permanent secretaries were PPP people. So the PPP put their people as permanent secretaries. And when President Granger came in, he did the right thing by saying, I am not fiddling with permanent secretaries. And he took a lot of blows from his people for doing that. He was upholding the neutrality, non-partisan nature of the civil service. The mistake, of course, like I said, that he didn't realize these people were not non-partisans. They were partisans. They were PPP members, some of them. But Granger did the right thing in principle, which is not to mess with PSs. It is obvious that the PPP is making no distinction between a permanent secretary as a neutral administrator of a ministry and as a political functionary. The political functionary is the minister, not the PS. And so those are questions I have about this whole up and cough and what have you. I'm reasoning that if the young lady was on government business as a government diplomat, then they wouldn't uncover her. as is claimed. Because you have to give, diplomatic courtesy. You see, this whole business of bribing people is going to have serious consequences for our country. Because we are producing a group of young people, especially young Africans, who believe that for them to be given the respect, they have to do nasty, dirty work. And people say, oh God, look how it's a nice girl. How she gets herself tied up with that. Yes, they are going to promote some African individuals, but they're going to put them to do dirty work. I'm speaking here to African young people, especially the young, bright ones, professional class who some of them like to chat nonsense, that they're professionals. When you get into a political den, they strip you of your professionalism. And you end up, like this young lady end up, being embarrassed on behalf of forces in the society. I'm warning young Black professionals, be professionals, but don't transact. Don't get into the business of transactional politics. Else you end up like that young lady. She said she was traumatized and all story. Old people say, if you go to crab dance, your skin got forget mud. I say again, whatever you say about David Granger, he didn't fiddle with the public service. He did the right thing in principle. Like I said, the mistake was that he didn't realize that these people weren't real public servants, that they were political functionaries and PPP members. He left them there. We are in big trouble and we got to do something about it. I am asking young Black people, I don't know how many of you all are on this program, but if the parents are here, talk to them. Be professionals. Working for the government and the state, you must do it professionally. Do not allow yourself to be used to do nasty work for the masters and their friends. Don't do it. Because you're just fitting into the stereotype that Black people are stupid and that they can be bought, they can be enticed by material things. So this whole up story with this girl, I have those questions. What role? What was her business in China? I understand she had some phone that could see the security cameras. And that is the phone that the Americans take away. Well, I don't know the security thing. I hope to have a lawyer before the end of the week to explain the legal story. Can a PS walk around with a special phone that can get into security things like the camera? Can a PS leave in the country, walk with those things? Aren't you supposed to leave those things when you're going out of the country? It makes sense to me. If as the permanent secretary, she got this thing where she can see the security camera and maybe whatever else, why is she walking with it when she going to China? Why is she going to give it to the Chinese? What? Why is she walking with this thing when she left? She is not a high-level functionary. I understand, countries that got nuclear weapons and so on, when the president of the country going away, he got the code with he. She's not the president. Why is she walking around with a sensitive device like that? Those are the questions I have. The next story, before I go, that caught my attention is this thing that they debate in Parliament today. This bill, this bill you see it on the screen there. Government to set up National Intelligence Agency. Government to set up National Intelligence Agency. Now, my understanding is that the army got their intelligence, the police got their intelligence. A couple of years ago, they've come up with a regional thing with regional intelligence. Now you get in a new intelligence body. And here is the story. According to the explanatory memorandum of the bill, the functions of the agency are set out in clause 4. And these include gathering information on national intelligence and security that will provide a basis for decision making and preventative action, and conducting analysis of the information, provided intelligence and security advice to the president, cabinet, and on the president direction where necessary. Ministers and entities in the security sector and other national stakeholders. Clause 5 provides for the president to give general and special directions to the agency. It also provides that the president may, after consultation with the minister or any other person the president considers appropriate, give directions to the director of a general or specific character regarding policy to be followed by the agency, and the director shall give effect to those directions. According to clause 5, the director shall have the authority, direction, and control over the agency, subject only to the president. The director official standing shall be equivalent to a position not less than the chief of staff or the commissioner of police. The director shall, subject to the requirement of legal advice, be the principal advisor to the president on matters relating to the provisions of the act. And finally, the appointment of the head, this director, is in the sole purview of the president. Such an arrangement, according to Stabrook News, is likely to give rise immediately to concerns. Sisters and brothers, there we have it. A new spy unit, a new spy chief, who is appointed by the president solely, and who will take directions from the president only. Why you want a new spy unit? Why you want a new spy chief? The army got spy unit. The police get spy unit. Those regional things that they talk about a couple years ago, that's a spying unit. What are we doing with another spy unit? Sisters and brothers, the hallmarks of a totalitarian state, a police state, that's what we have. So we are going to have a country now with 4 spy chiefs. A spy chief in the police, a spy chief in the army, a spy chief in the regional security thing that they formed a couple of years ago, and now a spy chief for national intelligence. A little country, 750,000 people, 4 spy chief. You all see why we got to get up and get? You all see why we have to stop this government? And we're not talking about the party spies that are paying to come in with communities and spy on we. 4 official spy chiefs in Little Guyana. I understand that the bill was laid in Parliament today. Of course, the PPP has a majority in the National Assembly, and they have not allowed in the past 3 years anybody from the opposition to mess with that majority. So they are most likely going to use their majority in the National Assembly to pass this bill. Lana make for dog. Who they spying pan na dog and cat? They spying pan we. Why are they spying on us? If you know you're doing good, why you need to frighten your populace? Your populace should love you. According to you all as one Guyana. Black people love you all. Black people put on the red jersey. Black people going over to the PPP. Why you still want to spy on them if they love you? As we say in the village, we is not jackasses. We is not jackasses. I now leaving the Queen English and are coming to we English. We's no damn fool. We ain't stupid. Even when we can't read, we just draw. Sisters and brothers, we are headed, if we're not there yet, to a police state, totalitarian state, one little country with 4 spy chiefs. And one now that is the creature of the president. Only the president can appoint him or her, and he or she is answerable only to the president. So the president is the president's personal spy chief and spy unit. I say no more. It's going to be the president's personal spy chief and spy unit. Burnham was a dictator. Burnham is a schoolboy to them this. Burnham is a schoolboy when it comes to dictatorship with them this. Burnham militarized the society. You had the police, you had the army, you had the national service, you had the people's militia. He militarized the society. All right. You got 4 spy chief. You got the police, you got the army, you got the regional thing. You gone farther than Burnham. That's what Gypsy was saying there just now. The things you were cussing Burnham for, you now take them and you multiply them by 1,000. So the president will have his own spy unit. Tomorrow night, Henry Jeffrey is going to be here. I think the next night, Brother Kemraj Ramjatan would be here. No, I may get it a little bit mixed up, but we have a star lineup for this week because we got things to talk about. Things to talk about, things to reason, things to educate myself about, because we are being taken for a ride. Remember, those who put on those red jerseys, they must apologize to the community first. And if they don't apologize, give them hell. They walk so spit so. You see them, turn your back on them. Treat them like untouchables. Don't beat them. We're not going down the violent road. Because like I said, there's no exit strategy when it comes to violence. No violence. Let the violence come from the government. Treat them like they get leper. Treat them like they get leper. They've sinned and come short. And we have to cleanse our community of that filth. And we need no government or no party to help us to do that. They live in our communities. All right. I'm gone. Until tomorrow night. Same time. Same place. The old timers remember that song? Same time, same place.